The fall of the Empress. The night sky over the capital of Zolaris burned red. Explosions shook the ground like angry giants. The proud crystal towers of the alien empire fell one by one, each collapse sending clouds of dust rolling through the streets deep underground. In a grand bunker lined with gold and glowing lights sat the tiny alien Empress. She was small in size, barely reaching the chest of most of her guards. Yet she carried herself with the pride of someone who thought she was untouchable. Her silver crown rested perfectly on her head, her long robe shimmering like starlight. Even as the alarms screamed and the walls trembled, her voice stayed cold. "These humans are weak." "Pathetic," she said, as if speaking to no one but herself. "They cannot survive a true war, not like my people." But her words no longer had an audience. The guards who had stood beside her minutes ago were now gone. They had rushed out. Shouting about an enemy breach, she sat alone, her golden throne hovering silently above the floor. Then came the sound, not of footsteps, but of heavy boots pounding against metal. Fast, sharp, and getting closer. She straightened in her seat, her thin fingers gripping the armrest. Her mind raced. Had the enemy already reached her bunker? The door slid open with a hiss. For a moment, all she saw was smoke drifting into the room. Then a tall figure stepped inside, a human soldier. Helmet cracked and visor shattered, face smeared with dirt and blood. His chest armor was dented. His left shoulder burned black from a blast. He looked like he had crawled out of the mouth of war itself. The Empress narrowed her eyes. "What are you doing here, human?" "This place is not for your kind," she said sharply. Her voice held the tone of someone who still believed she was above him. Even as her city burned above their heads, the man didn't answer. He scanned the room quickly, then moved towards her. When he spoke, his voice was calm, deep, and unshaken. "If you want to live, you need to come with me." She let out a short, mocking laugh. "I do not take orders from humans," she replied. But before she could say more, the ceiling shook violently, and a section of the wall cracked open, spilling dust and smoke into the air. A deep rumble followed, the kind that warned of something worse coming. The human didn't waste time. He stepped forward, grabbed her hand, and pulled her from the throne. "Move," he said, not in anger, but with the weight of urgency. She tried to resist, but the sharp smell of burning metal and the distant screeches of the enemy's war machines made her hesitate. Another explosion roared through the corridor outside. The human soldier yanked her close and shielded her with his body. Gosh! She felt the heat of the blast on his armor instead of her skin. For a moment, her arrogance cracked. This stranger was protecting her. Why? She had done nothing for him. Before she could think more, he lifted her off her feet. The Empress gasped. "Put me down. I can walk." She snapped, but he didn't even look at her. He moved fast, carrying her like she weighed nothing, weaving through the collapsing hallways outside the bunker. The city was chaos. Buildings lay in ruins. Flames painted the streets orange. Enemy drones zipped through the air, scanning for survivors. The human soldier kept to the shadows, moving from cover to cover every time he stopped. She could hear his heavy breathing, not from weakness, but from focus. Every move was precise, like he had done this 1,000 times before. They reached a half-destroyed archway when the shrill sound of a drone scanner cut through the night. The human froze, pressed her against a broken wall, and covered her mouth with his gloved hand. Her heart pounded. She could feel it in her throat. The drone's light swept over the rubble just meters away. She watched his eyes, sharp, calculating as he waited for the perfect second to move. When the light turned away, he bolted forward. Laser fire rained down from the sky, striking the ground around them. He twisted his body to shield her again, his armor sparking from the hits. Still, he didn't slow down. The Empress, clinging to his neck now without realizing it. felt the strange rhythm of his heart beat against her arm. It was steady, even. As death chased them, finally, they ducked into the black mouth of a half-collapsed building. The sound of the battle outside dimmed, replaced by the crackle of small fires inside. He set her down gently, checking the narrow window for signs of pursuit. She stared at him for a moment, unsure whether to feel insulted or safe. "Why?" she asked suddenly, her voice quieter now. The soldier looked at her, confused. "Why? Why, save me? You're human. I've never given your kind respect." He didn't answer. Instead, he reloaded his weapon, glanced at the broken doorway and said, "Because you're alive, and I don't leave people behind." For the first time in her life, the tiny alien empress didn't know what to say. And somewhere deep inside, though she wouldn't admit it, a small crack formed in the wall she had built around her pride. The air outside was thick with smoke and the metallic taste of burning steel. The human soldier stepped out of the collapsed building first, scanning the ruined street with sharp eyes. The tiny alien empress stayed behind the broken wall, clutching the folds of her silver robe. Her small frame trembled, not that she would ever admit it. She had been taught all her life that an empress must never show fear. Even if the universe itself was falling apart. "Stay close," the soldier said, his voice low but firm. She wanted to snap back with something clever, but the sound of distant marching silenced her. The enemy was still searching. Their heavy boots clanged against metal, mixed with the high-pitched hum of drones above. They moved out, the soldier keeping her on his left side. He walked with precision, stepping over shattered glass and twisted metal without a sound. The Empress tried to copy his movements, but her long robe caught on a piece of debris. She stumbled, nearly falling. Without a word, he scooped her up into his arms again. Her eyes widened. "I told you, I can walk," she hissed. He didn't answer, just adjusted his grip and kept moving. His breathing was calm, his pace steady. She could feel the faint vibration of his chest armor with each breath. They slipped into a narrow alley. The walls were blackened from fire, and the ground was littered with scraps of food wrappers and empty water tubes. The Empress looked up, catching sight of the sky for the first time that night. It was a dark canvas, split by orange fire and streaks of blue plasma fire from the battle above. This city, her city, was dying, and all her speeches, all her pride, meant nothing now. A sudden worry sound made her heart jump. The soldier ducked behind a crumbling wall just as a drone scanner beam swept past. The Empress peeked around him and saw the machinist's black wings folded in, its red eye glowing like a demon. She swallowed hard. She had always been surrounded by guards who fought for her. Now it was only one human standing between her and death. The drone passed, but the danger wasn't over. The soldier whispered, "They're closing in from the west. We need to reach the eastern gates before they lock them down." "Why the east?" she asked. "Because it's the only place they don't expect us to go," he replied. His eyes fixed on the path ahead, they began moving again. Slipping through side streets and broken corridors of old markets, the smell of burnt cloth and spoiled food filled the air. Shadows moved in the corners, starving civilians, alien and human alike, hiding from the chaos. At one point, they passed a small figure curled up in a doorway. It was a child, thin, pale, holding a cracked water canister. The Empress stared for a second, then looked away. The soldier didn't. He pulled a small ration pack from his belt and placed it next to the child without a word. The Empress frowned. "That was your food," she whispered. He shrugged. "They need it more." For some reason, her chest felt heavy. She had never seen such a thing before, someone giving away what little they had for a stranger. It didn't make sense to her, but it stayed in her mind as they moved on. The sound of heavy machinery echoed down the street ahead. Enemy mech stole armored walkers stomped across the open road, their spotlights sweeping for movement. The soldier crouched low, pulling her "Down beside him, wait for my signal," he murmured. She nodded, her throat dry when the mech turned, its spotlight pointing away. The soldier grabbed a small cylinder from his pouch. He clicked its smoke, burst out instantly, thick and white. "Now," he ordered. They dashed across the road, the smoke hiding them from view. The Empress coughed as the acrid fog filled her lungs, but she kept moving. Her bare feet slapped against the cracked pavement. The soldier was ahead of her now, turning into another alley. Just as she reached him, a blast tore into the ground behind him. Throwing her forward, she fell hard. The air knocked from her chest before she could even cry out. Strong arms lifted her again. The soldier didn't stop, running, even with the sound of more blasts closing in. His armor clanged with each hit from debris. When they finally stopped, they were standing at the edge of the city. Beyond this point lay a long bridge leading out, but the glow of enemy patrol lights showed it was heavily guarded. The soldier put her down gently. He stared at the bridge for a moment. Thinking, she watched him, feeling a strange mixture of fear and trust. "What now?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. He looked at her. "We cross," he said simply, "but it's suicide maybe." He cut her off, "But it's the only way." She didn't know why, but in that moment, she didn't argue. The human soldier didn't take her straight to the bridge. Instead, he turned into a maze of back alleys, his eyes scanning every shadow. The Empress didn't understand why till she saw the bright beams of searchlights sweeping across the bridge in the distance. Enemy soldiers patrolled like wolves, their weapons ready. No one would cross tonight without being cut down. The soldier led her through a half-collapsed street where shattered statues of old rulers lay in pieces. One had the head broken clean off. Lying in the dust, the Empress avoided looking at it. It felt like a mirror of her own fading power. Finally, he stopped in front of a small building half buried under rubble. It looked abandoned, its windows broken, the door hanging crooked on one hinge. He kicked it gently open and motioned for her to go inside. She stepped into darkness, the smell of dust and rust wrapping around her like a blanket. "This will do," he said quietly. He moved deeper into the room, checking every corner before signaling it was safe. Then he pushed aside a fallen shelf, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. The Empress hesitated at the sight. Narrow, dark spaces made her skin crawl, but his voice cut through her fear. "Down, now." The basement was small, the ceiling low enough that even she had to duck slightly. One wall was lined with old shelves holding broken tools. Another wall had a thick metal door, locked from the inside. The soldier checked it once, making sure no one could get through. Satisfied, he set his rifle within reach and finally sat down against the wall without a word. He pulled a small canteen from his belt and held it out to her. She looked at it like it was a strange object. "I don't drink after humans," she said coldly. His expression didn't change. He simply unscrewed the cap, took a sip, and then handed it to her again. Reluctantly, she took it. The water was warm, metallic, but it felt good against her dry throat. When she handed it back, she noticed he didn't drink more. He simply closed it and set it aside. Why not finish it? "You're clearly thirsty," she said, "because there's no telling how long until we find more." He replied. His voice was calm, matter of fact. She didn't know why, but something about his restraint bothered her. She had grown up surrounded by excess food, water, luxury, yet here was a man rationing every drop to survive. Silence settled between them, broken only by the muffled sounds of battle far above. The Empress sat with her knees drawn close, the cold from the floor seeping into her bones. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the burning city, the falling towers, and the humans battered, armor shielding her from fire. At one point, she woke to find him sitting at the base of the stairs, rifle in hand, watching the shadows. "You're not sleeping?" she asked. He shook his head. Not while they're out there. A distant worry of drones returned, faint but present. She hugged her robe tighter. Do you ever feel fear? She asked suddenly. Yes, he said, without hesitation. But you don't show it, she pressed. That's because fear doesn't help anyone survive, he answered. Her gaze lingered on him longer than she meant to. In her court strength had always been loud-shouted in speeches, displayed in gold and jewels. But here, strength was quiet. And it was carrying her through hell. Hours passed. The sounds outside fading into the stillness of night. The soldier finally spoke. At dawn, we move. The patrols change shift, then it's our best chance. She nodded, though her stomach tightened at the thought of crossing the bridge. He seemed to sense her worry. I'll get you through, he said simply. She didn't answer. But for the first time since the attack began, she almost believed him. The first pale light of dawn crept through the cracks in the basement ceiling. Dust floated in the beams, turning the stale air into a faint golden haze. The human soldier stood silently by the stairs, helmet back on. Rifle ready, the Empress watched him, her silver crown dulled by grime. He had been still for hours, waiting for this exact moment, when he finally moved. It was with the precision of someone who had survived too many mornings like this. Time to go, he said. His voice was calm, but she could feel the urgency hidden beneath it. She rose, brushing dust from her robe, every step she took toward. The stair seemed heavier than the last. The memory of the bridge lights from last night burned in her mind. Still, she followed him without a word. The streets above were quieter now. The chaos of the night had faded into an eerie stillness. Buildings leaned like tired giants, their shadows stretching over piles of rubble. Here and there, smoke curled from broken walls. The soldier moved quickly, taking narrow paths between collapsed structures. Every few meters, he stopped to listen. Scanning for danger, they passed a small plaza littered with broken statues and torn banners. Among the debris, the Empress saw something strange. 2 small human children huddled beside a shattered fountain. They were thin, their faces smudged with soot, their eyes wide and hollow. The Empress slowed her steps, staring at them. The soldier crouched, reached into his pouch, and pulled out another ration pack. He placed it in the smallest child's. Hands, eat slowly, he whispered. The Empress tilted her head. You keep giving away your supplies, she said quietly. Because some people don't get a second chance, he replied, standing to leave, for some reason. Her chest tightened at his words. They moved on, the distant sound of heavy boots. Echoing somewhere ahead, the soldier raised a hand, signaling her to stop. They pressed themselves into the shadow of a fallen wall, peeking around. The Empress saw them for enemy soldiers in black armor, scanning the area with sleek rifles. Between them stood a drone unit, its red sensor eye pulsing like a heartbeat. The soldier's eyes narrowed. We can't fight them head-on, he murmured. He scanned the alley beside them, then pointed upward. A series of crumbling balconies stretched across the side of a building. If we move above, we can slip past unseen, he said. He climbed first, pulling himself up onto the first balcony with practiced ease. When it was her turn, she hesitated, her robe snagged on the jagged edge. Without complaint, he reached down, grabbed her by the wrist, and pulled her up. For a brief moment, their eyes met hers, filled with stubborn pride. His with quiet determination. Then he turned and kept moving. They crossed silently above the patrol, the sound of boots and static radios drifting up from below. The Empress held her breath until they were clear, but as they dropped back to street level, a loud metallic screech split the air. The balcony they had just left collapsed, sending a cloud of dust over the enemy soldiers. Shouts rang out. They've seen us, the soldier said, grabbing her hand. They ran, weaving between ruined vehicles and collapsed storefronts. The eastern gates were now inside a wide arch. of scorched metal leading to the long bridge, but it wasn't unguarded. Half a dozen enemy troops stood watch, their rifles gleaming in the morning light. Beyond them, the bridge stretched out over a deep canyon, the far end disappearing into mist. The soldier crouched behind the remains of a market stall. Thinking fast, "We'll need a distraction," he said. Before she could ask how, he was already moving, pulling a small round device from his belt. "What is that?" She whispered. "Something loud," he replied. He rolled it across the ground toward a pile of fuel drums near the gate. Seconds later, boom. The blast shook the ground, flames leaping high. The guards turned toward the fire instantly, shouting, "Orders, now!" He barked. They sprinted toward the bridge, the noise of the explosion still ringing in her ears. She could see the mist curling around the far side now. Freedom was close, but so were the shouts of soldiers realizing what had happened. The bridge stretched out before them like a thin thread over the abyss. It was wide enough for two vehicles to pass side by side. But now it felt impossibly narrow. On both sides, the canyon walls dropped so far down that the mist below swallowed everything. The wind howled through the gaps in the metal panels, carrying the smell of burning fuel from the explosion behind them. The human soldier didn't hesitate. He stepped onto the bridge first, rifle raised, scanning every angle. The tiny Alien Empress followed, her small footsteps echoing against the steel halfway across. She dared a glance back. The flames from the blast still burned at the gate, but the enemy had already regrouped. Dark figures poured through the arch, weapons in hand. "They're coming." She breathed. "I know," he replied, his voice steady. The first shots rang out. Bright streaks of plasma cutting through the morning haze. The soldier moved like a shadow, firing in short, precise bursts. One enemy fell, then another. The Empress had seen battles before, but never like this. There was no army behind him. No shield wall, no war machine, only one human. And yet, he fought like he had no intention of stopping. "Keep moving." He shouted over the gunfire. She obeyed, clutching the railing as they ran. Every step felt like running through a dream where the ground might vanish at any second. A blast struck the bridge ahead. The metal groaning under the heat, the soldier grabbed her and pulled her behind a large support beam. A laser bolt skimmed past his shoulder, scorching the armor. She could smell the faint tang of burnt metal mixed with the salt of his sweat. He glanced over the railing, then back at her. "We can't make it across before they catch up," he said. Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" He didn't answer right away, just scanned the edge of the bridge again. Finally, he pointed toward a lower section where a broken maintenance walkway clung to the side of the structure. It was narrow, half destroyed, and swaying slightly in the wind. "That's our way out," he said. She stared at it, horrified. "It's hanging over the canyon. We'll fall." He met her gaze, his voice sharp but calm. "Better than being shot here. Trust me." Without waiting for her reply, he slung his rifle over his back, lifted her into his arms, and stepped onto the narrow path. The metal groaned under their weight, the wind tugging at her robe. Below, the mist swirled like a hungry mouth. Her fingers dug into his armor, her heartbeat pounding in her ears, halfway across. The path narrowed even more. A chunk of it had fallen away, leaving a gap they would have to jump. The soldier didn't slow down. He adjusted his grip, then leaped. For a breathless moment, they were in the air. The Empress felt the world tilt beneath her. Then his boots slammed onto the other side with a metallic clang. He steadied himself and kept moving. Behind them, enemy soldiers reached the start of the walkway. Plasma fire lit up the mist, bolts sizzling past them. The soldier ducked, using the angle of the bridge to shield them. By the time they reached the end of the maintenance path, the sounds of pursuit were closer. He kicked open a rusted hatch and shoved her inside. They tumbled into a narrow tunnel that ran under the bridge. It was dark, damp, and smelled of oil. But for the first time in hours, there was no direct line of fire. They moved quickly through the tunnel until it opened into a rocky ledge on the far side of the canyon. From here, the bridge loomed above them. The enemy still searching. The soldier set her down, breathing hard. "We're clear." "For now," he said. The Empress didn't reply, still gripping the edge of his armor like she wasn't ready to let go. The rocky ledge opened into a wall of trees. The forest loomed ahead, dark and dense, its branches twisting like claws against. The pale morning sky mist clung to the ground, curling around the roots. From somewhere deep inside came the faint rustle of movements, soft, careful, like something large was waiting. The human soldier didn't slow. He stepped into the shadowed green without hesitation. His boots silent on the damp earth, the tiny Alien Empress followed, her silver robe catching stray droplets from the leaves. The air here was heavy, filled with the smell of moss and wet bark. It was a different kind of danger, quiet, patient, and unseen. "Stay close," he murmured. His voice was low, but it carried a weight that made her obey without question. The further they went, the darker it became. The canopy above swallowed most of the light, leaving only thin shafts that pierced the mist. The Empress's eyes darted to every shadow. This was not the controlled, perfect beauty of her palace gardens. This was wild, unpredictable, alive. They crossed a shallow stream. The water cold against her bare feet. Halfway through, a ripple broke the surface ahead. The soldier froze, raising a hand for silence. Something moved beneath the water, a long, dark shape, gliding silently in one smooth motion. He shifted her onto his back and leaped to the far bank. A second later, a massive eel-like creature burst from the stream, jaws snapping where she had been standing. The Empress's breath caught in her throat. She had seen predators before, but never one so silent, so sudden. They pressed deeper into the forest, the sounds of the canyon and bridge fading behind them. Here, the only noise was the drip of water and the soft crunch of leaves underfoot. The soldier moved with the precision of someone who understood the language of the wilderness. Every time a twig snapped in the distance, he stopped, listened, then chose a new path. The Empress found herself watching his back, not just for safety, but because she realized she trusted it. As the light dimmed further, they came upon a fallen log hollowed out by rot. The soldier ducked inside, pulling her with him. It was barely large enough to fit the two of them side by side through the gaps in the wood. She saw movement, 3 shadowy figures gliding between the trees. Not soldiers. Hunters. Their bodies were lean and covered in mottled scales, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They carried spears tipped with jagged crystal. Each step they took was deliberate, their heads turning slowly as if scenting the air. The Empress felt her breath quicken, but a gentle squeeze on her hand stilled her. The soldier didn't speak. He didn't need to. His grip told her to stay quiet. The hunters passed within arm's reach of their hiding place. One paused, sniffing the air. She held her breath until her lungs burned. Then, at last, they moved on, melting back into the shadows when it was safe. The soldier eased them out of the log. "We keep moving," he said. They walked until the trees began to thin, and a faint glow of daylight returned. Ahead, through the fog, she could see the shape of a cliffside path leading upward. At the top, faint and small, was the gleam of metal, a rescue beacon. Her heart leaped, but the soldier's voice was grim. "They'll be watching it. Be ready." For the first time since the attack began, the Empress didn't answer with arrogance or pride. She simply nodded, because in this forest of shadows, she had learned that survival wasn't about who was powerful. It was about who could keep moving together. The cliffside path was narrow, jagged, and slick from the morning mist. One wrong step and the drop would swallow them whole. The human soldier went first, testing each foothold before letting the tiny alien Empress follow. Above them, the faint blue glow of the rescue beacon pulsed like a heartbeat. It was close, so close, she could almost feel the hum of its signal through the cold air. But her relief was short-lived. Through the shifting fog, dark shapes appeared at the top of the cliff. Enemy scouts, 4 of them silhouetted against the pale sky. They weren't just standing guard. They were setting up a turret. The soldier froze for only a second before turning his head to her. "When I tell you to run, you run, and don't look back," he said, his voice steady. She gripped the wet rock beside her. "What about you?" His gaze didn't waver. "I'll keep them busy." They climbed faster, the soldier moving with silent precision until they reached a narrow ledge just below the summit. From here, she could hear the low hum of the turret warming up. The soldier pulled a small, disc-shaped device from his pouch. Flash charge. He looked at her one last time. "Cover your eyes." A blinding burst of light and sound erupted above them. Shouts echoed through the fog. Before the enemy could recover, he vaulted onto the summit. Moving like a storm, his rifle barked sharp bursts, each shot finding its mark. 2 scouts fell. Instantly, the 3rd stumbled back. Blinded, the 4th swung the turret toward him. But the soldier kicked it sideways, sending the weapon clattering off the cliff. "Now?" he shouted. The Empress scrambled up the last few steps, her small hands clawing at the rock until she reached level ground. Through the thinning mist, she saw a small rescue shuttle resting on a flat plateau. Its engines were already running. The hatch open. A human pilot stood at the door, waving urgently. But the fight wasn't over. More enemy troops emerged from the tree line beyond the beacon. The soldier fired in controlled bursts, forcing them to take cover. "Go," T ordered. But she didn't move. "You'll die if you stay here." She shouted back. He gave a faint, tired smile. "Better me than you." Something in her snapped. She wasn't just the Empress anymore. Not in this moment. She was someone who couldn't bear to watch him fall after carrying her this far. She grabbed a loose piece of debris, a jagged shard of metal, and hurled it toward the nearest enemy. It struck the soldier's attacker in the head, giving him just enough time to close the distance and finish the fight. They ran together toward the shuttle, the sound of gunfire chasing their heels. The pilot pulled them inside, slamming the hatch shut. The shuttle lifted with a deep roar, the ground dropping away beneath them through the viewport. The Empress saw the enemy shrinking into the mist, their weapons flashing uselessly at the sky. Inside, the cabin was small and dimly lit. The soldier slumped against the wall, his armor scorched and dented. She moved closer, placing a hand gently on his arm. "I was wrong about you. And you're kind," she said softly. He looked at her, exhaustion in his eyes, but also something warmer. "Guess we're full of surprises," he replied. The shuttle broke through the clouds, the sun spilling golden light across the horizon. For the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself to exhale. And though she was far from her palace, far from the life she once knew, she realized she had been carried to safety not just in body but in spirit, by the one person she had least expected a human.